Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we're going to be doing a bit of a news episode. This will probably be a bit shorter, but I did want to talk about some exciting news which has been announced over the last couple of weeks. One is an official announcement of some new content or a new DLC for one of my favorite games, and another is based off a forum post, but I think something that folks are going to be interested in on this channel considering it has to do with one of the oldest games that I've covered on this channel. But first things first, what's the official announcement? Well, as you might have been able to guess by the content that you're looking at in front of you, Suzerain, which is a kind of like a visual novel style game. It's a game basically where you're put in the shoes of a recently elected president in a post-revolutionary country in the 1950s. A lot is sort of based off of like Turkey and a couple of other countries in the post-World War II era. But basically, it's a visual novel game where you are a president of this country and you have to deal with all these sorts of challenges. All of the country names are fictional, but there's very clearly a Soviet bloc. There's very clearly an American bloc. The American president seems to be very much modeled after Eisenhower. Again, 1950s, Cold War. You're the president of a post-revolutionary country. It's got elements of Hidden Agenda, which was sort of an old classic of sort of the black and white DOS game days where you were a Central American country. And it's got elements of games like Rogue State, which are a little bit newer, but it's really this kind of political drama that unfolds primarily through text. And I played the hell out of it not that long ago on this channel. Well, they've announced the first DLC for Suzerain, and it's going to be called Suzerain Rizia, which is going to introduce a new governmental style. So instead of being the president of a democratic country that's coming out of revolution, you're going to be in a monarchy. So you are a king, you are King Romus Toras of Rizia, and you will have to navigate, I guess, the challenges of the world in this period. So negotiating with neighbors, finding more about the history. They're trying to build sort of a Suzerain universe, an extended universe, if you will, it seems like, and I'm pretty interested on this. I want to know how the politics of monarchy are going to be different. In the original Suzerain, you very much had to deal with politics. You had to deal with the former general, sort of the former leader of the country, named Saul. And you had to deal with a lot of different interpersonal relationships, be it with your ministers, even with your family. You had to make some decisions about whether you would corrupt yourself to help your son out. There were a lot of these different dynamics, and there were a ton of different possible endings to Suzerain. It was really kind of a deep game. Well, now instead of in a political electoral situation, now you are the head of a monarchy. And so I'm curious to see what that entails. That'll definitely have a different tone in terms of interpersonal relationships, in terms of politics, royal houses within the country, different kind of country leaders. It says face trials and tribulations of being part of the Toras royal family, figures such as Queen-Mother Estela Toras, your daughter Princess Vina Toras, and your uncle Grand Vizier Hugo Toras. That doesn't really mean anything to me, but I am curious to see what comes of this. The folks at Torpor Games who made Suzerain have also announced another game, which is, they haven't like announced, I don't know if they've announced the name of it, but there's going to be another game, or actually, yeah, I think they have. I think it's called The Informant, I think. But they've announced another game, which is going to take place in the prequel period. So while I assume Rizia is occurring around the same timeline as Suzerain, the Informant game, you're basically going to be in the intelligence apparatus in the time before the revolution. And so I'm assuming that's going to put you in some difficult situations of like, are you loyal to the state? Are you loyal to the revolutionaries? And like, where do things go there? They've released very little information about that, but instead of being a ruler of a country in that game, you're going to be kind of a cog in the wheel of a lesser figure within the Suzerain world. So it really seems like they're trying to build out the universe, and I think that's pretty cool, and I'm really excited about it. And so that's kind of some information I wanted to share with you guys today. Suzerain Rizia, an upcoming DLC for Suzerain, and I'm really curious to see what this all looks like. I'm really excited. No announcement on release date or anything like that, but definitely keep your eyes open, and I will keep you posted about it as we learn more. Oh, also the base game Suzerain is going to get a 2.0 patch, which is going to have some major enhancements as well. So that should be pretty interesting. It's called the Amendment Update, and it is going to have some new features. It basically just says, you know, dive deeper into the world of Suzerain with the addition of world map integration, new interactions, more story content that dives into the constitutional amendment, Blutish rights, and former presidents. So there's a bunch of updates that are coming in with the Suzerain 2.0 Amendment Update for the base game, which is kind of surprisingly, honestly, to me, because Suzerain had been out for a while now. I think it came out, when was it? Back in December of 2020, and there had been updates, but there hadn't been any DLC or anything like that. So, you know, 3.5 years, or I guess 2.5 years after release, they're making their first major announcement with regards to DLC, which is, I don't know, it seems like it's been a while, but it was a very successful release. I mean, it's got over 4,400 reviews on Steam for a small project like this, and it was released to rave reviews. So really good game in my opinion, and excited to see what comes of it. Okay, and the other piece of information has to do with a game which I was involved with for some time, and that is Scourge of War. So if you're a fan of the channel, if you've been around for a decade or so, you will know that some of the original videos on this channel were around Panzer Corps 1 and Scourge of War. I played a lot of Scourge of War Gettysburg, a lot of Scourge of War Antietam. I even did like a whole 11-hour battle of Antietam. And Scourge of War is a real-time tactical simulation of American Civil War battles at Gettysburg, at Antietam, at Chancellorsville, Brandy Station, and a hypothetical battle at the Pipe Creek line. Basically, if Gettysburg hadn't happened and the battle had occurred where Meade had originally intended for it to occur. It's a real-time tactical game, which basically is a high fidelity, not in terms of graphics, but like tons of units at the regimental level, a pretty zoomed in view of the map, kind of a spiritual successor to Sid Meier's Gettysburg, but units are much bigger, and the sort of unit counts and whatnot in terms of like the sprite ratios are much larger. A much more detailed battle simulation than the Ultimate General games, which came out after, because Scourge of War Gettysburg is like originally 10 plus years old now, and it comes from the Take Command games, Take Command 1, Bull Run, and Take Command 2, Second Manassas, and so it comes from that lineage of games. But I did a little bit of work starting with Brandy Station, which was the last DLC for Gettysburg, and then Scourge of War Waterloo, which came out after that, and it was published with Slytherin and Matrix Games, and took the Scourge of War game to the Waterloo battlefield and into the Waterloo campaign. They had DLCs for Wavre, Quatre Bras, and Ligny, so it covered the whole campaign. These are tactical battle games, so there's not really, like, Waterloo kind of had a strategic layer where there was a little bit more of a sandboxy battle campaign map where you can move around Belgium and fight. But generally speaking, these are like, hey, we're going to look at this specific instance within this battle. We're going to make a scenario out of it. We're going to have a whole bunch of units, and it's going to be much more detailed from a tactical battlefield situation than a lot of other games, which tend to take a higher view. Now, Scourge of War had been published with Slytherin and Matrix Games for a time. It wasn't originally with Gettysburg, but they joined, I want to say, around the Chancellorsville time period, with Slytherin, and then with Waterloo, that was always with Slytherin. But last fall, they actually ended the relationship with Slytherin, I believe. I wasn't really involved by that point in time, so I don't know, but I know they no longer are for sale on Steam, and they are no longer for sale via Slytherin's website. So right now, Scourge of War is kind of a dead game, if you will, in the sense that you can't buy it anymore. And that may change. So what was announced on the Norbsoft Devs website, which I will link in the description, was that basically Norb was saying, hey, you know, we're no longer partnering with Slytherin, but for the first time in it's been like 5 years, I think, since they've done anything with it. But he kind of indicated, hey, listen, you know, we are going to basically be revitalizing the Scourge of War series. And this is something that a lot of people had asked. Like, they had carved out a pretty good niche for themselves within this sort of wargaming community, very Grognard-style games. But Norb announced that, hey, we're working on the game. We're going to be making enhancements. We're going to be making changes, and we're going to do this and get it back for sale at some point, hopefully not too long ago. Now, again, that originally all happened last fall. We're now in May, so it's obviously going to be a little bit of time, but it's a passion project. No one really works full-time on this, even Norb. This isn't his full-time gig, so it's sort of everybody's doing this on the side. But he did post something a couple days, maybe a week ago on his website or on his forum that did say that repurchasing the game, Scourge of War, will be required. So they're obviously working on something, but it sounds like it might be a remaster, because he says repurchasing the game will be required as the plan stands. It'll be worth it. Not everyone's going to get, or not everything is going to get overhauled, but the visuals will be. So that was like one of the, and you're looking at visuals now. So like you can see the game is showing its age. It's based on a game engine that is over a decade, actually maybe 2 decades old. It's based on an X20 or it's based on a 32-bit system. So starting with Windows 7, I believe it was, Windows shifted from 32-bit to 64-bit. XP was the last 32-bit operating system. That came with some pretty stringent limitations around RAM and other things like that. So the game was very much dated from a architectural perspective because the Scourge of War game has always been based on a 32-bit system. They did say the game engine is not changing, but we should get better implementation out of it. We're going to fully integrate Steam for multiplayer, which they had multiplayer, but it was pretty laggy and wasn't like super crisp or anything. So it was totally dependent on like your host or your other player. So it wasn't the most stable multiplayer platform. And so they're working on that. They're working on getting an early access version so folks can test and make suggestions. And they're also going to be upgrading the game from 32 bits, as I said, up to 64 bits. So that'll be a big change in terms of the under the hood architecture of the game. He said for sure the game is going from 32 bits to 64, which will have major visual upgrades. So presumably they're going to overhaul the graphics. It is based on a sprite system, not a 3D system for the units. So that's always been a bit of a limitation. But the other limitation is just the fact that it is using kind of an archaic 32-bit system, which hasn't been really standard since Windows XP. So what is that, like 23 years ago? But they're going to be upgrading it to 64 bits, so that should make a big change, should make a major upgrade in terms of how the game looks, and they're going to be getting the game back into Steam for sale at some point in the future. Again, passion project. No one's getting rich off of this. You know, some folks may be a little bit frustrated, like, oh, I got to rebuy the game. But your existing copies will continue to work if you have it. And this is basically a remaster, I'm assuming, of Scourge of War. I don't know if they're going to add more battles for the Civil War stuff. I'm assuming, because they did make some upgrades and changes for Scourge of War Waterloo, which did not trickle down to Gettysburg. I'm assuming that means that they will make those same changes for Gettysburg. So Gettysburg is like a decade old in terms of, even though the engine is much older, the actual game is like a decade old. And then they made upgrades for Waterloo, but they didn't carry those back over to Gettysburg. So I'm assuming what they're going to do here is they're going to just do a whole overhaul for all of Scourge of War, hopefully for both Waterloo and Gettysburg. Again, I'm not involved anymore, so I don't know. But making those changes, making those upgrades, and I think just the 32 to the 64-bit operating system is going to allow them to do a lot of things in terms of performance. I know that performance in the game, it was always kind of a little bit laggy, a little bit, you know, not great frames per second. And I think a big part of that was they were fighting these battles with 40,000 sprites, for example, on some of the larger battles in Waterloo, representing over 160,000 soldiers. And when soldiers die in the game, their bodies hit the deck, and you can set your settings so that they never disappear. So those dead bodies are there forever. And so, you know, the game, it had a lot in it for being a 23-year-old architecture. Norb did a lot of stuff to improve that, but still, when you're working with a 32-bit limitation, there's RAM limitations and other things like that. I'm curious to see where they go with this, because it sounds, again, like it's a Scourge of War remaster. Maybe they'll add more battles and more DLCs, or maybe they'll make some kind of all-inclusive edition. I don't know. Hopefully they make major improvements to multiplayer, major improvements to the visual, and maybe some UI enhancements to kind of bring it into the modern era, because at its core, this game dates back to the Take Command days. But like, I'm really curious to see what happens here. I'm excited. You know, selfishly, I partook in the previous version of the game that was for sale for Waterloo. So full disclosure there, but I'm not involved now. So I'm just a fan watching on, and this channel has played a lot of Scourge of War over the years. And so that's a big update. So that's enough of me rambling. Suzerain, some big updates and announcements about new DLCs, new games. Scourge of War announcing effectively what it sounds like is going to be a remastered edition, although we really don't know much at this point in time. We will find out more in the future. And those are my updates, guys. I just wanted to let you guys know that. I want to hear your thoughts in the description. Is this something you're interested in? Is this something that, you know, you're excited about? Would you like to see more of this? I'm certainly going to play Scourge of War when it comes out. I'm certainly going to play Suzerain Rizia when it comes out. But I want to hear your guys' thoughts and what you're thinking, because we don't get a lot of tactical Age of Musket style games out there. And, you know, the ones that we do tend to be old, or they've been around for a while, and a fresh coat of paint and an overhaul to performance could be well worth the wait for Scourge of War. But who knows when we'll know anything. Again, it's a part-time endeavor, so we may be waiting for a while. But I wanted to share that information with you. I know a lot of people said, like, why are they pulling it from Slytherin? What's going to happen to this? Like, am I ever going to be able to buy this again? Well, the answer seems to be yes, at some point in the future, and it'll be a better version than what was available previously. And beyond that, we don't know a lot. But hope you guys enjoyed the video. Leave your thoughts below, and that's going to do it for today. So until next time, this is the Historical Gamer saying once again, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, I'm out.